here. Now I would like to welcome my next guest into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. On Fridays we usually have Frank Carini from EcoRI, but at this particular Friday we have the luxury of inviting his wife Joanna, who is the Executive Director of EcoRI. So I want to welcome you around the corner. Thanks for coming in. So come on over, put your right foot over here in that little piece of tape. And this is what you see, or you've seen if you've seen Frank on.
I have seen. I've seen him every day.
Did you know that this is what the studio is going to look like when you came in?
No, I had grand visions.
You had no idea.
I had no idea.
So you're the Executive Director of EcoRI, and Frank is the editor. So just a little back up.
Yes.
Were you guys together before you started this? How did this, this work-life relationship work out?
We were together, and we're still miraculously together.
Because how many years has it been now?
Yeah, 8 years.
8
almost.
years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I feel like we need to get you like a coffee mug in maybe 10 years.
Or one of those cocktails that I just saw.
Well, they're saving you a cocktail with Willa back there. So appreciate your coming in today because, as we say, encourage folks to read EcoRI. Just great stories about things happening in the environmental community here in Rhode Island, which are just good things to know about. I mean, most of the time it impacts people and impacts your life. And one of the stories that was fairly high up that I want to start with and happened here not too long ago, just behind us, was the gas leak right over there by Point Street. And it looks like, there was the call at the Assembly for an investigation from state senators, and they pointed specifically to the work that EcoRI did.
Yeah, that was very flattering and humbling. I mean, we report this information, and it's always great when somebody picks it up and takes an action, or it causes some sort of action to happen. So, yeah, I mean, basically, there has been no report from DOH about what the health impacts of that leak were. 2 pounds of PCBs were released, and the community is demanding some information about what health risks were there, what should we be looking for.
And how concerned were you when you heard about this and then we started to hear more about it, both from that night and the next days, where you're like, this is a really big event that could have the potential to have some significant health and environmental impacts?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of mini leaks throughout New England that happen along these gas lines, but this was massive. I mean, they had to close down the freeway. Enough gas was leaked to heat like 190,000 homes for a day.
That was another EcoRI piece that I love, that you were able to get that information and quantify 190,000 homes.
There's a lot of math involved.
There's a lot of math, and there's a lot of math and a lot of gas.
Yes, but along with that gas, these chemicals were released. I mean, PCBs are a potential human carcinogen, and nobody really knows what the impacts were. And so these senators are demanding that information be released to the public about, should people be concerned? Well,
we'll see more about that. The more information, the better, especially something of that magnitude. Obviously, the hope is, it doesn't happen again, but also, why did it happen? How did it happen? And what was the impact? So again, something that EcoRI did that the legislature took notice of and are demanding answers for. So one of the good pieces coming out of EcoRI. Now, this is Tim Faulkner, who is up at the State House all the time and did a roundup of pieces of legislation just to kind of keep an eye on that are of importance to EcoRI. But there was the particular one, and you're laughing already because I have to ask you about this. There's a bill that would allow parrots or parakeets on state campgrounds. Now, we were talking about this before, so they're not allowed on state campgrounds right now, but the bill would allow them on state campgrounds, folks who have them as pets. Yeah, pro parakeet, where do you stand on the parakeet issue?
You're really putting me on the spot here. Yeah, this whole thing came up because there's this guy in Warwick who has a cockatoo that he...
One guy.
And he's been trying for years to get this legislation passed. Not him personally, but he's working with the State House to get this legislation passed to allow him to bring his beloved pet to the campgrounds. He's gotten kicked out twice of campgrounds, and this legislation would allow up to 2 parakeets per campsite per family if it passes. And so I don't know how many years this has been going on. It was actually picked up by AP last year. You can see that article online, and You know, it's just one of those.
That's
Rhode
what,
Island
because we're
things.
talking about it. We're like, well, if you have a parakeet, like, don't you want to bring it? But then, aren't they kind of squawking a lot? I'm sure other campers might be like,
People
oh.
are squawking too. I mean,
Animals have rights too. I was like,
Have rights
where does EcoRI stand on this?
I don't know. Well, they took out the original legislation, from what I understand, had gerbils, goldfish, and one other animal, and they took that.
They
that
stripped the gerbils and
they
goldfish out.
They stripped
What?
the rodents and left in the parakeet, and we'll see what happens. It's big legislation.
You know, I talk about this. I mean, these are the smaller kind of creature pets, but you know, pets are pets, and people, you know, are fairly, you know, they're family members.
Exactly.
They are family members, and if you have a family member, you want to bring them to the campground with
Hey,
you.
you know, if I can bring Frank to the campground,
I can
we should be able to
bring a parrot. Oh, Frank, don't you wish you came in today? This is what happened when you let the girls go at it here. But one of the things that Frank has been working on is looking at that estuaries report and the health of the bay. And one of the things that you had reported this week is that due to the health of the bay, more opportunities for shellfishing, especially in the more northern parts of the bay. You know, is this a win for Rhode Island?
Yeah, this is one of those rare pieces of good news. For the first time in 70 years, parts of the Upper Bay are open to shellfishing, and you know, a lot of the state's economy is driven by shell fishermen, and so it really is a win-win. The bay it's cleaner now than it ever has been because of better sewer overflow management, and yeah, it's actually great news.
Yeah, the DEM definitely touted it as great news. I'm sure there's more information both on EcoRI and the DEM if you're curious as to where it is. But again, little highlight of where the good news is. And another piece that was interesting, why sea rise is worse in the Northeast? Do we know?
Well, I mean, we suffer the worst weather, so why wouldn't it be the worst here? It's actually pretty complicated, but it has to do with the melting Arctic sea ice and how that's interacting with the slower Gulf Stream going across the Atlantic Ocean. It's basically creating this, from what I understand, a pileup of water in the mid-Atlantic. It's like a water traffic jam that's like leveling off and then pushing water back towards the northeast coast, and so
we're the
lucky
recipients.
Beneficiaries.
We
of
are
all
the
this
recipients.
water. And yeah, I think there are 7,000 people in Rhode Island who are living within a 7-foot sea level rise inundation zone, so we're going to feel that impact.
You know, there was a piece just a couple of weeks ago I talked with Frank about the roads and bridges that could be potentially impacted, which was great journalism as well to point out to folks. You know, Rhode Island is really good. There's so many resources between the colleges and in Newport as well, studying the potential impact of sea rise. There was just a big conference here recently. You know, it obviously is an issue that could, you know, really have a potential, like, huge impact here in the state.
Yeah.
So that was one of the articles that you can read on EcoRI. I always like to ask Frank, I'm like, what are you working on? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. But, you know, talk to us a little bit about your role. He's editor, you're executive director. So he's looking at the pieces that they come in with a fine-tooth comb. But now that I have you in studio as the director, how would you describe your role?
Oh man,
how much time do we have?
I guess so. Frank deals with the editorial side, and I drew the short straw. I deal with the fundraising and development side. So making sure the organization is operational, that our budgets are, I won't say flush, but you know, flush enough that we can continue the journalism, and you know, then there's outreach and marketing, and occasionally they let me, you know, do some reporting work, which is kind of where I started, and.
They put you into the managerial role.
Yeah,
well,
yeah, but it's all fun, and you know, when you believe in something, it's just an easy job, as you know.
Yes, you gotta love what you do.
Yeah.
And from fundraising, where do you find where do you get your most fundraising from?
It's our readers, actually. I mean, we are a reader-supported organization, and so it's, you know, it's a great thing. We do also get funding from grants and from advertisers and sponsors, you know, like you do. So it's a mix.
But readers, if you read EcoRI, I think it's of value to here in the state, again, focusing on environmental issues. I urge you to check it out. It's great that we get you in on Friday so we can, well, you're Frank. But I appreciate your coming in to give us your perspective a little bit. But anything that you want to else share with folks while you're here?
No, I mean, I wish I knew what Frank was working on. He's not here today. So
He's
maybe
an
it's something
international
big.
man of mystery, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And he's a funny guy. I like when he comes in, and it's always just a good conversation. So never hesitate to provide feedback if there's anything that you want to weigh in on or have questions about. I'm certainly happy to follow up with you and talk about the next week when they're in here at 4:15. So I very much appreciate your coming in
thanks
today.
for having
I'll
us.
let you around the corner to start in on your weekend. Go have one of those cocktails.
I will.
Okay, letting you around the corner. Joanna Detz, the Executive Director of EcoRI, in studio for Frank Carini, who couldn't make it today, but she might be the better half, but Frank might argue. I'm going over a few stories that were high up in the website that were of interest this week, and I'll just run through them again. Again, looking for answers on that gas leak that occurred a few weeks ago here off of Point Street. Some state legislators demanding some answers as to how that happened. And of course, on the environmental side of things, they are also looking to find out environmental and health impacts of what had transpired, talking about the bill at the State House to allow parrots and parakeets onto campgrounds. It was just a piece that Tim Faulkner had written about bills of note up at the Assembly, and it was certainly one that stood out. Other things as well, the health of the bay. Shell fishing opened up in northern areas of Rhode Island for the first time in 70 years. Clearly a testament to the health of the bay. Check that piece out, as well as the one about why sea level rise impacts the Northeast more so than other parts of the country. So check that one out as well. EcoRI.org. And of course, as Joanna says, they depend a lot on reader contributions. So if you're supportive of them, support EcoRI.